Recently, I played every Sims handheld game that I could get my hands on, and there are a lot. But even after covering 28 different games, ranging from the low-res to the tropical, there are still even more handheld Sims games that I didn't play, and intentionally kept separate from the rest, which are of course the MySims games. Where mainline Sims titles are all about freeform gameplay, making up your own story as you go along, and taking care of your Sims' needs, the MySims games are almost completely different. Since they're RPGs, they're full of story, quests, item collection, minigames, and no motives at all. Not to mention that the art style is pretty different too, with blocky, low-poly characters that look like they're descendants of the Roblox noob. It's hard to describe exactly what MySims is because all 6 of its titles are not only completely different games, but each game is also completely different between consoles too, as they have releases for not just the DS, but also for the Wii. It's been compared to Animal Crossing and now Roblox too, I guess. And in this Nintendo Power issue, the game designers reference drawing inspiration from a few different sources, including Japanese anime and manga, and even Sesame Street. So which of these things is it? Is it Sims? Is it Animal Crossing? Is it Sesame Street? Since the Switch re-releases came out a few months ago, I decided now was a good time to try and figure out what MySims is really all about, and to complete my quest of playing every Sims handheld game I can find by playing every MySims game to see what I've been missing out on. The first MySims game released in 2007, initially for Wii and Nintendo DS, and with later versions being available on mobile phones and BlackBerry, Nintendo Switch, and PC, which is the version that I started with. Well, technically, I played the Extreme Epic Taco Bell Kids Meal Promo Edition, because it was the easiest to get my hands on. I thought it would be a demo version, but they were just handing out free CD-ROMs of the full game with your cinnamon twists, which is pretty generous for a kids' meal toy. You start off by naming the in-game town that used to have a bustling population thanks to a magical builder that helped it thrive, but since the builder disappeared, everyone left and the town kinda sucks now. If only someone who also had magical building powers could come build cool stuff and restore the town to its former glory. Someone who could be gaining sentience right this very second and create a sim on the next screen. After creating your sim, which consists of cycling through lots of quirky options and mid-2000s type outfits, the gameplay can be broken down into 3 main mechanics: construction, crafting, and requests. Construction consists of making buildings by snapping blocks and items into place. As someone who's always been pretty bad at regular Sims building, I found it very approachable and user-friendly, especially since there aren't really any rules and you can place most objects wherever you want. Crafting, instead of making buildings, has you making objects and furniture that go in the buildings. Like with construction, there is some general guidance of what to make and how to make it, or in this case, a blueprint to follow for each item, but the game again gives you a lot of freedom to basically just completely ignore the blueprint, build outside the lines, and go crazy if you want. As long as it meets some height and shape requirements, a couple of well-placed blocks can be turned into not just chairs and tables, but things like a stove, DJ booth, or arcade cabinet. Lastly are requests, where building and crafting combine. As the mayor mentioned in the beginning, the town isn't very lively or populated, but as you play, more guests will show up at the hotel and move into town if you fulfill their requests. While the construction and crafting are the main gameplay loop here, the 77 different townies are really what bring the game to life. Each NPC has their own distinct personality and role to play in town, adding new buildings like a nightclub for DJ Candy, a restaurant for Chef Gino, or a museum for Vincent. And townie requests also bring in a new element to the crafting process: essences. Essences are crafting materials that can be pretty much anything: plants, animals, food, toys, emotions, concepts, and they're found by exploring, from shaking trees and fishing to prospecting and socializing with other Sims. The essences are then used to paint with new colors and patterns, or to actually be used in object designs as part of the main structure, which I found really creative. I have to say, I had way more fun crafting, exploring, and just running around and chatting with other Sims than I thought I would for a game that's so unlike typical Sims games. The main gameplay loop is pretty simple, but it feels rewarding to unlock new areas and items and meet new townies as you progress. Again, I'm not much of a builder, but even though I didn't have a ton of confidence in stepping outside the blueprints, it was really fun to know that the option was there and that I could keep putting little apples and flowers on top of whatever I wanted just because I could. My favorite part, though, wasn't really one specific aspect, but just how cute this game is overall. The art style, the sound effects, the sim interactions, the flowers and butterflies everywhere, all the townies having their little enrichment times with their various picnic blanket activities outside. It all just makes for a really wholesome aesthetic that made it super easy to just keep playing and exploring. The main difference between the Wii and PC versions come down to the PC title having the feature to play online with friends, which EA shut down the servers to in 2011, unfortunately, and the ability to mod the game. And there are a decent amount of MySims mods out there, which I did not expect for such a niche game. I did play a little bit of the Wii version just to be able to say that I played it, but I didn't get very far after realizing it was pretty much exactly the same as on the PC. MySims on DS starts off in a similar way to the Wii version, where you're moving to a new town with a dwindling population. While there's no mysterious, magical builder that skipped town, or any building and crafting at all, you're still in charge of livening up the town and raising its star level. Every NPC in this game is completely new and has their own shop that they run or roles that they fill in town, like mayor, policeman, and dog costume guy. But don't be fooled, Tim doesn't just dress like a dog. He also runs not one, not two, but 3 different racquetball courts in town, which you can play a minigame in to earn money. Why so much racquetball, you ask? I don't really know. There doesn't seem to be a reason. I get having a minigame, but 3 courts seems a little excessive. Other minigames like fishing, lei making, and skydiving are run by other non-dog costume-wearing townies to help you earn money that can be used to buy clothes and furniture. While I didn't expect this game to be an exact copy of the Wii version, I was a bit surprised at how different it was, and how much more basic it seemed by comparison. Even though I didn't mind that there was no building or crafting, everything felt really slow-moving. The story, the activities, even just running around, which I did get some help from the DS emulator in speeding up because I'm impatient. And running around the town is almost like half the gameplay in this big spread-out map, so it started to feel pretty tedious to play after a while. While the personalities of the townies were distinct enough, they also didn't feel as fleshed out and likable as some of the Wii townies. But all of that being said, there's definitely still some humor and charm to it all, and I'd say that the fact that it's 14 years old means it deserves a little leeway. Last up for the original games is the Java version that was available on both mobile phones and Blackberries. The story in this version was most similar to the DS version, except this time your sim is moving back to town in hopes of rebuilding a magic fountain that brings everyone good luck. Aside from the gameplay and layout changes that are to be expected when squashing any game down into a mobile version, the town and characters are all pretty much one-to-one with the DS title, including their stores and minigames, and of course, Tim and his dog costume is here and still obsessed with racquetball, as is canon across all universes and timelines, apparently. The navigation and minigames all seem pretty fun and polished for a game that's played on a phone keypad, and I appreciate how close it sticks to the DS version and plays like a true MySims game despite the console's limitations. MySims Kingdom is a direct sequel to the first game, which made me think it would essentially be just a new medieval-themed version of the original, and it kinda was, in a way, but it was also so much more. Starting off with the Wii version again, the backstory reveals that the kingdom was once protected by a group of Sims called Wandaliers and their magic wands. But as the Wandaliers all moved away, the kingdom started to suck, so the king decided to name a new Wandalier who was being magically created on the very next screen. After making your sim, the tutorial teaches you the basics of Wandaliering with the help of this guy Marlin, who's really giving me Dumbledore from Potter Puppet Pals vibes. Being a Wandalier gives you the power to craft and build objects just like in the first game, except now your ability to float objects around at will is explained as magic and is powered by a resource called mana. Your building requests also don't come from new Sims in a hotel, but from the different townies you meet as you sail across the kingdom on a royal quest directly from the king himself. The islands of the kingdom each have their own dedicated theme, like cowboys, horror, and science, and are filled with appropriately themed characters, some new and some returning from the first game. While building and essences make a return and are a main mechanic of the game, you're no longer limited to just building houses and objects and decorating the inside, though you can still do that too. On the first island alone, I was building with gears and axles, solving a sprinkler pipe puzzle, and making bridges and corrals as tasks for the townies. And when I wasn't building, I was herding cattle, solving mysteries, and helping the local sheriff chase down outlaws. As you progress, you unlock new items and powers for your wand, allowing you to eventually visit new islands and help the rest of the kingdom. I had a lot of fun with this game. It really felt like a true sequel in that it took everything that was great about the first game and made it even better, while also adding in lots of new areas, features, characters, and lore. The world felt more alive, and the characters also felt even more expressive with more silly humor in their dialogue, making it feel childlike, but not in a dumbed-down baby way, but in a whimsical, fun kind of way. I mean, just look at Sheriff Ginny go, hobby horsing around town. She's so cute. Sure, it still was a little tedious to keep collecting mana and essences at times, and Buddy, your quest companion who follows you around everywhere, would not stop repeating this same voice line over and over, and it was kind of driving me crazy. But overall, it was still really engaging, and I found myself playing for longer than I meant to. Even though I only played in the starting area and the western island, that just made me eager to keep exploring and eventually visit the rest of the kingdom. The DS title of My Sims Kingdom is yet again completely different from the Wii version, which I did expect, but I didn't expect it to be this different. The plot in this game isn't just that Sims are moving out of town or that the king is sending you on a special quest, but that some guy snuck into town, whipped out a magic vacuum cleaner, and sucked up half the town in the middle of the night, stealing everything from trees to entire houses. With help from Dr. F, a recurring character from the first game, and his new mad scientist inventions, you're yet again tasked with rebuilding the town and restoring it to its former glory. Dr. F's inventions are the Extractor and the Synthetron, which let you magic vacuum up essences found around town, and then combine them to create new objects to decorate with. While I did like that crafting and decorating made a return, the whole Synthetron mechanic did leave a bit to be desired. The items that you can make are both a mystery until you've made them and are chosen randomly from a list of possible outcomes, which leads to a lot of duplicates, wasted essences, and wasted time. It was mostly a guessing game of which essences came from where and which combos created what, turning sensible crafting into a MySims themed loot box system. Aside from creating items on your own, the NPCs around town also make requests for certain items or ask for help with other tasks, including playing their minigames. While there was no racquetball this time, there was tennis, which also has a racket and a ball, so close enough, along with kayaking, vegetable vendor, ghost blaster, and a few others that I didn't get around to unlocking. I was kind of hoping for the kingdom part of the title to come into play here, but aside from the king showing up for a total of 20 seconds, this mostly played like the original My Sims game, but a bit worse. While that doesn't make it a terrible game by any means, I just hope that no kid picked this up to play with the king and the castle and the kingdom that are on the cover, and ended up disappointed when they got mad scientists and kayaking instead. Overall, this game just felt pretty meh. I can see some appeal in decorating your house and the town, befriending the eclectic townies, and solving the overarching mystery of who vacuumed up everyone's stuff in the beginning. but the gameplay felt more tedious than anything, running around very slowly yet again in this giant map and lootboxing items into existence. Honestly, if it didn't have the comparison of the other MySims games, especially the Wii versions, it might not seem so bad, but as it is now, it wasn't super engaging to play. The next installment in the series is MySims Party. There was a bit of a trend in the late 2000s of games and existing series all making their own party game, and clearly MySims was no exception. While not every party game is a direct clone of Mario Party, I still feel like it sets the standard for all other party games, so if I draw any comparison, it's mainly just to use as a reference for the genre. In this game, festivals are rounds of competitive minigames with varying themes and controls. There's no game board, stars, coins, or item shop like in Mario Party, but just a simple point scoring system and some good old-fashioned minigames. Out of the just under 50 different party games, some did feel more creative or engaging than others, but that is mostly based on my personal preference, like how I hated this Spot the Difference pizza game because the pizzas were rotating and I got overwhelmed and I do not work well under pressure, no matter what my resume says. But I did like this paper collecting game because it was really easy and I won. What makes the competition a little more interesting, though, are the character stats that you can assign to your custom sim: power, speed, stamina, and luck. Each minigame will recommend a higher score in a different stat, giving you a boost to your performance if you have the right skills. After playing a game that uses the recommended skill though, that stat decreases for every player after the round, and only resets at the end of the festival, or if you use one of these cards that can raise or lower certain skills. Maybe I'm just a hater, but I didn't really like this concept. I'm already bad enough at the pizza game on my own. I don't really want any extra obstacles just because I've got a low luck stat. Part of what I feel makes competitive party games like this so fun is that unless they're chance-based, how well you play depends on your own skill. While using the cards can help a little, some games still felt frustrating to play because of these arbitrary stats. Overall, there is a very loose recurring goal of rebuilding the town and getting new Sims to move in, as each festival unlocks returning characters that will appear with their buildings around town, along with new monuments to build or decorations to add to the outside of your house. While it was nice to see some familiar characters and to have some type of goal to work towards, the townies did feel a bit lackluster. They do join you at random as competition in the games, but outside of the games, you can't enter any of their buildings, and their dialogue is all just minigame tips, or repeating the same line of flavor text over and over again, like Poppy did when I played her festival. And though you can enter your own house, only the outside can be edited. I do get though that the minigames are the main focus here over the characters and town building, so maybe I'm expecting too much. For what it's worth, this game didn't feel like an exact Mario Party clone. The minigames were fun when I wasn't being handicapped by my stats, and overall it still had that same MySims charm and aesthetic that's come to be a staple in the series. Even though the DS versions of the last two titles had a bit less to offer compared to their Wii games, I have to say that I actually prefer the DS version of MySims Party. The setup was pretty much the same, with festivals, recurring characters, this monkey, and stats for each sim, but the town feels more lively and fleshed out this time. According to the fan wiki, it has the same amount of minigames as the Wii version, but it also had extra features like actually being able to enter the buildings around town, buying clothes and items to decorate the inside and outside of your house with, a pretty big map with different types of scenery, a dedicated item shop to buy the cards that you can use in the festivals, and the ability to play with your friends in the DS's local wireless. I also had more fun playing the minigames in this version, even though most of the games were the same between titles. Not to be that guy, but I did have a little bit of trouble with the controls on the Wii, which could be due to a number of reasons, from the fact that Wii motion controls are infamous for just kind of sucking sometimes, to the fact that I was playing on a couple of candles instead of an actual sensor bar. Whatever the reason, the DS version was a lot more enjoyable to play, especially when it didn't feel like the controls were working against me. Though that didn't stop me from coming in dead last in my second festival, so I'll admit, I think it might just be a skill issue. Still, win or lose, I think the DS version is superior this time around, and it makes me wonder why the Wii version didn't have all the same fun features, because it really made it feel pretty lacking by comparison. MySims Puzzle Party, while it also has party in the name, was actually a mobile game that was released exclusively in South Korea. It had at least 6 different mini-games, each one a different type of puzzle game and themed around a MySims character, including Poppy, DJ Candy, Dr. F, Chef Gino, and MC Emmy and Mitch from the main party games. Because of its limited release, there's not a ton of footage out there or much that's even known about it, but I thought it was worth a mention to cover every MySims game out there, and because it does look pretty cute. Similar to the trend of lots of series creating their own party games, was the perhaps even more popular trend of every franchise creating their own racing games in the late 2000s, which, of course, MySims also joined in with a racing game of their own. The Wii version of MySims Racing starts off with a typical MySims backstory about how the town is in need of someone to fix it up, but this time it's a racing town, and everyone is sad because the local famous racer ka-chowed out of sight and now no one wants to race there no more. The new famous racer is, of course, a sim that you get to make yourself, including their cart, customizing everything from the bumpers and headlights to the hood ornament and sound of the horn. After playing a couple of tutorial courses, you're then able to either race other NPCs on the map, which unlocks them as playable characters in championship races, or help them out by playing timed collection trials, which builds up a relationship with them. The actual racing is pretty straightforward with Mario Kart Wii-style steering of holding the Wiimote sideways and tilting for control. You can drift around turns, which I could not get the hang of despite being pretty decent at Mario Kart drifting, if I do say so myself. Collect plum bobs around the map that add to your speed boost, and pick up item boxes that give you different power-ups as you race, from throwable soccer balls and watermelons to bubble and pumpkin traps to this UFO that works like the bullet in Mario Kart. The collectible plum bobs are also used outside of the races as currency to upgrade your cart or add new decorations, which you unlock by winning races and befriending NPCs. I will say that with Mario Kart Wii as a reference, the controls here were not the best. I found that even when playing as a character with pretty good stats, I actually played better if I just ignored the drifting altogether, if that tells you anything. But the customization, recurring characters, and story mode were all fun additions to what could have been just a more basic racing game, so I still had fun overall. When playing the DS version, I once again found that I liked this game more than its Wii title. This time you navigate around the map by driving your little cart around town, which I thought was such a cute way to work in more driving even when you're not racing. NPCs will have tasks for you to complete around the map, like giving them rides in your MySims Uber side hustle, or collecting items under a time limit, which also unlocks new upgrades for your cart as you complete them. The actual races work about the same, with the speed boost and most of the same power-ups, though the DS controls were much easier to handle compared to tilting a Wiimote around. I even ended up actually winning some races this time, now that I could get the drift to behave. And as you win gold in different tracks while racing against other characters, you unlock new tracks and areas of the map to visit, with even more townies that are looking for more help and Uber rides. The drivable map, the character interactions, and of course the nicer controls all made this game a lot of fun. I still don't think I'd play it instead of Mario Kart, but it was a nice change and definitely not bad compared to some of the other racing games of the era that also hopped on this same trend. The next game in the series, MySims Agents, once again moves in a different direction from the first two games. As you can maybe guess by the title, your sim gets recruited to be a secret agent for the Sims Protection Agency, taking on special cases, recruiting other agents to your force, and uncovering the town's corrupt mysteries. Each case can be solved by wandering around town and looking for footprints, interacting with items, interviewing other Sims, and collecting enough evidence to lead you down the right path. Even though the cases are relatively easy to solve, I still had a lot of fun figuring things out because the stories kept me guessing. Instead of something like collect 20 fingerprints or another kind of boring collection fetch quest, Each clue was unique and led you in a different direction, revealing the behavior of certain characters and uncovering parts of the bigger mystery underneath it all. While being a secret agent and solving mysteries is pretty different from standard MySims gameplay, this still felt so much like a MySims game. Even though there's no building items, gathering essences, or rebuilding the town, all the interactions with returning characters, with their quirky dialogue and distinct personality, are really what made the game fun, as I've personally found to be true for most MySims games. Judging by the cover, I thought this game would be a lot more boyish and serious considering its theming, but with its colorful map, goofy interactions, and silly storylines, it definitely didn't take itself too seriously. Out of all the games so far, even though it's probably the most different from the original, this is the game that I could see myself playing the most just for fun. Unfortunately though, as is sometimes the case with this series, the DS version of MySims Agents didn't exactly measure up. To start, the initial story was pretty slow-moving. I spent almost 20 minutes watching these drawn-out cutscenes explaining the very basic exposition until I could finally play the game myself. The exposition being, there's a rumored secret treasure in town, and you're a secret agent hired by the dementia-riddled mayor to both find and protect the treasure from being stolen. Without different individual cases to solve, there's an interesting mix of gameplay here that combines aspects from some of the past titles, like town decorating, relationship building, and extracting essences to create new items. As far as I could tell by how much I played, the essences and decorating didn't really seem to have much of an effect on the secret agent plot or overall mystery, but in addition to crafting items, you can also play minigames to earn money, buy furniture and clothes, and take on side quests while the main storyline is being stalled for time, basically. Even though all of these games so far have a pretty clear young demographic in mind, this one especially just felt the most hand-holdy at times, packed with messages about tutorials and dialogue that was a bit more on the kiddie side, for lack of a better term. I can't really call it a fault since it's made for kids, but consider that my humble observation and do with it what you will. My bigger complaint is that while you do wear a suit and have a secret hidden HQ in your house, the agent's theming felt like it barely had an effect on the gameplay. Things like the extractor and playing minigames, while familiar, felt more like rehashing old features instead of bringing them back in an interesting way. Not to mention, the gameplay also seemed random for a game about secret agents, especially compared to how engaging and well-themed the Wii version was. Maybe things do finally get more interesting after playing for another few hours, but I already played it for an hour and a half, and I was mostly just disappointed and didn't really have it in me to keep going. Lastly, we move on to SkyHeroes, the most recent entry in the series and perhaps the most different out of all the games so far. The story on the Wii version starts off with your sim who's crash-landed their plane on an island and gets patched up by some nice friendly locals, who then immediately recruit you to join their rebellion army. The army that you may or may not be blackmailed into joining is the Skyforce, a group that's at war with Morcubus, the returning MySims villain who's trying to take over the whole sky. But it's not just some silly supervillain plan to steal the sky or whatever just to have it. He's intentionally interrupting trade routes so that people have less access to food and medicine, which is actually pretty evil and weirdly realistic. At least for a series that previously had you collecting smiley face points and waving around a magic wand. The gameplay centers entirely around flying planes for the Skyforce, going on different types of missions like patrols, dogfights, and races to stop enemy forces and win the war. While I'm clearly not the target audience for this game, and while the inverted controls for flying the plane did take a bit to adjust to, I did still have some fun while playing. The maps have lots of obstacles and tunnels to navigate through, there are power-ups floating around that give you different abilities, and you can customize your plane with new upgrades that you unlock as you play. In the mainline Sims games, words like woohoo, juice, and bubbles are used to tone down the adult themes and keep things less on the nose, so I guess I was expecting something like that here, but SkyHeroes seems to take the militia theming pretty seriously, all things considered. It doesn't shy away from mentions of missiles, deadly weapons, and war, because even in a MySims game, war never changes. That being said, it is still a kid's game, so it's not actually all gritty and morbid, even if the colors, costumes, and story are all a bit duller than in previous games. In addition to a DS version, SkyHeroes also had a port for Xbox and PS3, and from what I can tell, they were actual ports for once, with the same story and gameplay across all four. When I played the DS game, the gameplay and of course the graphics were a little bit different, but the same characters are part of Skyforce, and the overall plot of defeating Morcubus is still the main focus. The controls were also a bit easier to handle compared to piloting a plane with a Wiimote and nunchuck, though again, I think that's probably just a skill issue, so I won't blame the game for this one. Although I'm sure that a MySims Air Force Simulator is the perfect game for someone out there. The army theming, combat, and plane-centric gameplay made this game feel less approachable overall. All the other games in the series seemed more neutral, as concepts like spies or medieval kingdoms were more of a loose suggestion than a heavy theme. I don't mind that the gameplay is different necessarily, but the recurring characters are really the only familiar element here, and even that's being generous, considering they're all speaking in army lingo and decked out for war. I mean, Violet is supposed to live in a gothic house and give off spooky vibes just from talking to her. Literally. But almost none of that comes across here when she's just dressed in tactical gear and droning on about combat missions. That's not to say that there's no typical MySims humor or personality in SkyHeroes. And to be fair, the fighting itself is a little more on the goofy side, with giant laser beams, goo guns, and force fields among the missiles and shotguns and proximity mines. But the more whimsical charm is really toned down to make room for all the reconnaissance and enemy troops and blah blah blah. Of course, I'm not surprised that the SkyHeroes game was all about heroes flying in the sky, but after playing all the other MySims games and getting to know the characters and the lore, it just felt a little disappointing to see all of that take a back seat to MySims Warfare. When I started this video having only played a little bit of Kingdom DS back in like 2010 or something, I was kind of wondering what all the excitement was about and if MySims as a series would measure up to the hype of its fanbase over the years. But it's probably no surprise to learn that I think I get it now. Even though not every game was my favorite, there's so much variety across all the titles that it makes for a pretty well-rounded series overall, especially for only being active for a few short years. No matter the theme or story or questionable controls, every MySims game feels unique and charming, which is especially due to all of its characters. You can really tell that they were designed with a lot of creativity and care. They have personalities and quirks and backstories that complement and flesh out the worlds they're a part of instead of just being set pieces among them. It might be a little basic, but I do really like Poppy and Violet, also Makoto and her weird robot-isms, Ginny, Jenny, Yuki, Princess Butter. I could go on. They're all so cute. But let me know who your favorite characters are and what your favorite game out of the series is. It's a lot of fun to keep exploring these games and learning new things about them, and I'd love to hear what other people think. Hopefully, the recent re-release on Switch means even more new fans will discover these games, and more titles will be remastered in the future, because I definitely want to keep playing more. Hi, welcome to JellyTV, where I shout out a video that I think deserves some love. I recommend watching Working Woman Barbie, a deep dive thrift games by Mary Love Mew. Mary covers this working woman Barbie doll from 1999 that came with its own CD-ROM full of working woman activities that you could play on your computer, and I just think it's so cool. She does such a thorough job in covering everything from the gameplay and the doll to its history and some of Mattel's other software. Plus, I love that she really dressed for the part. We love to see a working woman in action. If you're like me and love retro media and toy lines like this, then I really recommend checking out the video and the rest of Mary's channel. A huge thank you to Daniel E. from ABQ, Kevin Evans, Bunny, Bunzo, Karis Desarun, Grayson and Sage, Hayden Campbell, India W, Lojua Animal, Lou, Luna Stephenson, Mark Kent, Nighttime Coral, Paper Sam, Pharmamags, Pixel Puppy, Shaples, Theodore Nicolawilius, Vivian Valencia, and the rest of my patrons for supporting me. I assigned each of you a classic MySims essence based on your general vibe, so I hope it matches you well. Let me know if I got it right.